The man in motion himself joins me now, Rick Hansen. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us.
Oh, it's an honor, Steph. Thanks. Appreciate it.
So you are in town for We Day, which is tomorrow. What do you hope the students take away from your message?
You know, it's just an honor to be at We Day. And anytime, you get a group like Mark and Craig Kielberger putting We Day on and supporting their own charity, Free the Children, it's an example of how young Canadians can have a dream. They can see a problem and look for a solution. And, the thousands of youth who are in there, they've been involved in the great success story for Canada. They've been nurtured by teachers about social responsibility and paying it forward. And so I want to be able to tell my story and encourage them to keep a positive attitude, to overcome adversity, and to find their passion and just go for it and make a difference.
Now, they often talk about the me to we moment. What was your me to we moment?
Yeah, well, for me, there's been a number of them, but pretty much it's being in a situation where you're struggling through your own barriers after my injury, receiving support from others and realizing how grateful I was, to be able to actually become a Paralympic champion and to realize I didn't need to use my legs in order to be one. And I did that on the backs of so many amazing people who contributed, and I wanted to make a difference. And that led to my Man in Motion World Tour and my dream of making a difference and making the world more accessible.
Now, you are a huge advocate for an inclusive and accessible world. Why is it important to empower youth to take this action?
Well, there's over 1 billion people on the planet living with a disability today, and with aging baby boomers, that number is going to go and skyrocket. There'll be 1 in 5 Canadians by 2030, and this is a huge issue. It's a charitable issue. It's a human rights issue. It's an economic and cultural issue that really needs to be attended to, and it's a long journey. And youth really need to be a positive level of awareness, great attitudes, and then we hope to leave a challenge that they can join us by identifying and removing more barriers, because there's still a long way to go.
Now, I have to admit, I'm guilty of this too. When I think of accessibility, I kind of narrow it down to just getting into buildings, but it's more than that. There's cognitive disabilities, there's visual, hearing impaired.
Yeah, truly. I mean, there's visible challenges and then not so visible, and what really counts is how we treat human beings. We treat people, as equals and with honor and respect, and try to remove the stigmas associated with disability, to normalize it, and then to enter conversations about where the barriers might be, so we can just have a conversation and then eliminate them. And you never realize until you see situations where if you mobilize youth, they can realize that that maybe the playground, the school may be accessible, but the playground might not be, and they can open up those barriers and make it more inclusive so that everybody can be there.
And we were briefly talking too, even the Oscars still have barriers for those with disabilities.
There's no question. You hear a lot of talk about, inclusivity and respecting a diverse society, but nowhere was the conversation about people with disabilities. And, more dramatic was the red carpet that led to the sweeping, flights of stairs.
Yeah.
And of course, there's no wonder that there's no one in the crowd with a disability that's a great actor that you can visibly identify with, because in the schools, the stages aren't accessible, and and kids often aren't able to be part of that early development, that they too can be an actor and win the Oscars, and why not?
Exactly, why not? Now, it's been 30 years since you started the Man in Motion World Tour. How much have things changed for those with disabilities?
One of the great things that have changed is that, we've done some recent research in public opinions, and Canadians overwhelmingly believe that it's a human right for people with disabilities to be included in all aspects of society. And that's a really big breakthrough, and it really reflects the DNA of our country and our charter and what we expect Canada to be. And so they also realize, though, that there's a gap that that still exists between our aspirations of Canada and the level of accessibility. And the fact that Canadians know that is a really good sign, because it means that there's a lot of goodwill out there. If people can identify barriers, they can be mobilized to keep breaking them down one community at a time.
Now, there is a new online video recently released, and in that video, they mention it's only a disability if you create barriers. And I love that, because if there were no barriers, then there would be no disabilities, because everyone could do anything they want.
Exactly, and isn't that what it's about, is to normalize the technical or the clinical diagnosis that someone might have, whether they have a stroke or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or MS or spinal injury, and visual or hearing impairment or cognitive challenge, and just to really deal with, well, what's in the way, you know, and if it's a stigma, if it's a bad attitude, or if it's perhaps a physical barrier, let's bust it down, because if we allow people with disabilities to just get on with their lives and be accepted as normal contributing citizens, then you know, we're going to be all better for it.
So how can the everyday citizen help?
Well, the first thing is check your attitude, because, you know, not only about viewing other people who have challenges, you know, but also what if it was you? I mean, because eventually, you know, by 2030, 1 in 5 Canadians will have a disability, and if you have a good attitude, that'll have a huge impact. But secondly, Canadians can be aware of barriers. They can be mobilized. They can come out to our rickhansen.com website, and they can, you know, get engaged. They can perhaps make donations to their local communities, find local champions. We have a school program that engages 500,000 youth across this country, and we're asking them to get in motion and to create the level of barrier busters that's necessary to accelerate change for the future.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, and thank you for continuing to advocate for everyone with a disability, and hopefully one day we'll remove those barriers and there will be no disability.
Yeah, you bet. We'll get there for sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.